Hello everyone and welcome to HorrorView, a channel dedicated to all things horror. My name is Aaron and everyone's horror movie experiences have to start somewhere. Whether it was getting excited over a Halloween themed episode on a TV show, sitting in the dark listening to ghost stories, or even reading Goosebumps novels. Most horror lovers can agree that at some point in their childhood, whether they remember it or not, they suddenly got this fascination with the horror genre. The adrenaline of being scared, or the dark, gloomy aesthetic that gave you this rush that most other genres couldn't give you. Well, me personally, I probably couldn't exactly pinpoint when this fascination popped up in my childhood. I was always kind of a strange kid. I created a character who transformed into a vigilante who had blade arms and would go out every night on murder sprees. This is him coming home after a murder spree, covered in blood. I probably couldn't even tell you what age I was when I drew this. Fuck if I know. So, why the fascination? Well, when I was about 7 to 12 years old, I was heavily exposed with the fantasy genre, which, let's be honest, with a small amount of tweaking can easily enter into horror territory. You know, movies like Lord of the Rings, The Black Cauldron, Pirates of the Caribbean, just to name a few, all had this kind of creepy aesthetic at least once or twice throughout the film. I remember even watching The Pagemaster and only getting fully interested in the movie when they went into the horror section of the library. I don't know what it was, but the violent imagery of swords, skeletons, supernatural forces against the backdrop of graveyards, caves, and moonlit skies had this real sense of grit that I was looking for. Lord of the Rings, had the ring wraiths. The Black Cauldron had the really disturbing Horned King. And Pirates of the Caribbean, had the cursed crew of the Black Pearl. My imagination, however, kind of took over when I went to bed at night and made it very difficult to sleep. So I was about 13 to 14 years old when I decided to take the next step and approach actual horror movies. And these are not fantasy ones, the ones that are actually labelled as horror. Most people were already shocked that I was watching movies like Lord of the Rings because I wasn't really old enough. And I would tell my friends about it, and then the teacher would overhear, and then she'd call my parents saying that I was telling my friends that I was watching Lord of the Rings, and then my friends would talk to their parents asking why can't I watch Lord of the Rings, and then would come back to my parents because they let me watch Lord of the Rings in the first place. But that still didn't stop me, and so it made me want to see how much further I could push the boundaries. I remember a friend of mine letting my sister and I borrow a bunch of his horror movies, and that included movies like Jeepers Creepers, Devil's Rejects, Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and 5. And yes, those were the first Freddy movies I ever watched. Freddy vs. Jason and the Friday the 13th remake. At this stage, I was still in the too scared to sleep after watching a movie phase. So when my sister and I decided which movie we were going to watch and grabbed the disc that we wanted to put into the DVD player, we made an event of that shit. We grabbed a blanket, got on the couch, and held onto each other for dear life. But afterwards, I went to bed, hugged my teddy bear really tight, and never wanted to close my eyes again. Then, of course, a few days later, my sister and I picked another movie and sat through another couple hours of insomnia-induced terror. The more movies I watched, the more sleepless nights I endured, the more I felt obligated to keep watching these movies. Fear started becoming an obstacle for me, and I began to realize that horror movies were a thing that needed to be respected. So back to the question, why the fascination? For me, it was overcoming a fear that I had for years. I could barely look at a DVD cover of a horror movie, let alone put it into the DVD player to watch one. But sitting through an entire horror movie felt like a triumph, and waking up the next morning knowing that I had gotten through it felt fucking fantastic. I forcefully exposed myself, knowing that the more I watched, the less scared I became, and that I could iron out all the irrational fears that I built up over my childhood, so that all that was left when viewing a horror movie was fascination. Of course, this took me many, many tries and many years to get done, and even today, I'm still scared sometimes of horror movies. But who isn't? From this point forward, I could see horror movies for what they really were. Artworks. The dedication, enthusiasm, and drive that these creators add to these films inspired me to want to do that myself. B-grade horror films made on a shoestring budget proved that it was possible for anyone to make these, and even some of the greatest horror movies were made on the lowest of budgets. You know, of course, I can't speak for all horror movies, but that's a completely different ballpark. So thank you everyone for watching. Hope you all enjoyed, and I hope this has been a bit of an insight into what to expect with the content coming up. I'm super excited to focus on this sort of content, as it has been a dream of mine for ages. So I'm super keen, and yeah. So welcome to the channel, and I'll see you all in another video. Bye.